Hello everyone, it's great seeing you again, and thank you for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 7th day of February now, 1 week into the month of 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show once again. Hazardous weather graphics, one of them to show today, back to the wind chill warning for the western Arctic coast, and that's for tonight through Monday evening. On the western Arctic coast, there are wind chills running anywhere from 65 to 80 degrees below zero. And the rest of the yellow areas there for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, across the Brooks Range, eastern North Slope, all the way down into the Fairbanks area, the Alaska Range, and out west into the Seward Peninsula and the northwest coast. Those are all wind chill advisories. They're out for tonight and through tomorrow for wind chills 45 to 55 degrees below zero. And in the case of St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait coast, it's a winter weather advisory, which is out for tonight through Monday night for blowing snow, occasionally reducing visibilities to, half a mile or less at times. Again, St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait coast. Otherwise, from there, going to satellite imagery, you can see a lot of clouds with the weakening frontal boundary. There actually looks like it kind of splits into two separate bands, one back Nikolsky west of Atka, and then the other one, the former one, it's a little more well-defined there, from about Unalaska Island into the Alaska Peninsula, and that's spreading clouds all the way up, at least the high stuff, up towards St. Lawrence Island. And behind it, a break with some clearing for, it looks like, AKwx today, and then the next system spreading moisture up to the western Aleutians there, and that cloud band extends off the chart, or down off the picture there. Otherwise, a lot of dry conditions you can see over the Gulf of Alaska, Northeast Pacific, Panhandle looking good. A few snow showers, though, around the Yakutat area. And also in Cook Inlet, lower clouds today had flurries going from Kenai on up into the Anchorage area. And that's pretty much let up today, starting to see some clearing in that. But kind of a clear swath there for the north central interior from the Yukon Flats out toward into the Seward Peninsula, and then also over the North Slope. But areas of clouds pretty varied and variable over much of Alaska today, north and south of that area, with some flurries falling anywhere, but wherever it fell, it was no significant really precipitation at all. Heaviest was with that frontal boundary out there over the Alaska Peninsula, where False Pass in the last 24 hours picked up about 1.5 inches of rainfall, while Unalaska in the last 12 hours only had 0.2 of an inch. So that heavier rain they had yesterday, that shifted over to the western Alaska Peninsula. And Pueblos picked up about 2/3 of an inch of precipitation. 24-hour amount was about 0.6 of an inch at St. George Island there, and probably similar amount for St. Paul. Otherwise, that's it for precipitation around the state. And winds not all that strong. 54 miles an hour was a peak wind gust at Cape Newenham today, but that's a normally windier area from the east-southeast. And also Cold Bay had 43 miles an hour out of the southeast for a top wind gust. And Gamble, northeast winds at 45 miles an hour today. That's also a normally windier area up there from the northern Bering Sea. Otherwise, on the chart today, high pressure center of which is over 1,050 millibars. That's why it's shaded in red, since that's greater than 31 inches on the altimeter. About that into the Old Crow area there over the just east of the border. But along the Alaska Range, there are variably the mostly cloudy skies. Light snow ended in the Fairbanks area, but kind of persisting in the afternoon there on the north side of the central and eastern Alaska Range, with clouds down the eastern Kuskokwim Valley to the Alaska Range. Also Cook Inlet, as I mentioned, with the flurries pretty much having ended. Were some light snow showers around Yakutat there that didn't amount to too much. Panhandle basically dry and variably cloudy to mostly clear. And then that weakening front continues to weaken there over the eastern Bering Sea, with the winds not even a factor with it, no gradient at all. But the rainfall persisting, becoming lighter and more intermittent from the Alaska Peninsula and Alaska Island up toward the Pribilofs. May have been some very light snow showing up around Nunivak Island, but nothing of significance. And the next system over the western Bering Sea doesn't really make much eastward progress there. It keeps it breezy, windier out over the western Aleutians with rain and snow mixed. And that former front continues to weaken with some rain chances continuing for the eastern Aleutians, mainly Unalaska Island to the western Alaska Peninsula, east of the Pribilofs, though, and a risk of some snow or rain and snow or some type of mixed precipitation. Pretty just a threat there for the Nunivak Island area. And maybe some snow showers might develop in Bristol Bay, but that's really stretching it a little bit there. Behind that, higher pressure and fair amount of clearing with light winds from the central Bering Sea southward across Adak and Atka. Otherwise, flurries, fog continue for the eastern Arctic coast. Some of that might sneak on down south of the Brooks Range along the eastern border to the eastern side of the north side of the eastern Alaska Range. But again, very light amounts expected. The only thing that would act to do is probably keep the overnight temperatures warmer than it would be in the clear areas, which will be farther to the east. But notice a tightening gradient there over the southeast interior from the Alaska Range down to the North Gulf Coast, and especially over the Lynn Canal area, looking at full gales developing tonight with storm force wind gusts for Lynn Canal Glacier Bay. Won't be so much of an increase in the winds for the southern panhandle. And otherwise from that, little winds tending to pick up, even outflow gusts for Copper River Delta and maybe Prince William Sound. And partly and mostly cloudy, variably cloudy Kodiak Island should stay dry. Still a chance of some snow showers for the eastern North Gulf Coast, particularly around Yakutat, but nothing too heavy at all. And for tomorrow, just go for a few clouds there along the coastline on down the Panhandle with strong gusty northeast winds, colder temperatures, highs in the teens there for the northern Panhandle, and 20s down south. And it's pretty windy there for the eastern Alaska Range, Delta Junction down into the Copper River Basin. And milder with more clouds and a little bit better chance of snow showers with still some lingering remnant moisture. That frontal boundary might kick off some flurries, light snow, fog, snow showers there from Togiak Bay right on up to St. Lawrence Island, and high pressure, light winds, no wind for the Pribilofs to the central Aleutian areas, light winds for the eastern Aleutians. And that front trying to edge some moisture into Adak, may or may not do it by the afternoon. Winds, maybe small craft advisories, and that's about it. And the Arctic coast there, 1,063 millibar high up to the north, keeps it cold and mostly dry, but a little bit of moisture sneaking in between those two high centers will keep a chance of flurries on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for Tuesday, we've got still windy, but winds starting to diminish now over the northern Panhandle, but a little more gradient in the south, so picking up the winds there. Still mostly dry, or will be dry, with mostly clear skies. And then disturbances kind of traveling from southeast to northwest there over the northeast Pacific and the Gulf of Alaska will increase the clouds and bring a chance of light snow in across the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, maybe southern Cook Inlet. And otherwise, pretty quiet out over the Bering Sea. Maybe a chance of rain central western Aleutians with a storm well to the south, and also another chance of rain for the Alaska Peninsula. Lows tonight, 10 above in the northern Panhandle to mid-20s, Prince of Wales Island and the central coast. And anywhere from 5 to 15 below Kenai Peninsula, Madanuska, Susitna Valley, Anchorage area to 25 to 35 below Copper River Basin. And again, 35 to 50 below, or 55 below possibly, for the northern and northeast interior, north slope areas. Below zero, St. Lawrence Island, 10 to 15 southwest coast, near freezing for the Pribilofs, mid to upper 30s for the Alaska Peninsula. Highs for tomorrow afternoon, lower teens there for the Lynn Canal area to 16 in the Juneau area, then mid to upper 20s down south. And highs well below zero, 15 to 25 below Tanana Valley, to 30 to 35 below over the north slope and the northeast interior, near zero Yukon Delta coast, and a little above St. Lawrence Island, lower 40s eastern Aleutians, western Aleutians, and the Alaska Peninsula. And then the lows Tuesday morning, 30 to 40 below Copper River Basin, northern Kuskokwim Valley, anywhere to, let me back that up a little, near zero, single numbers Panhandle. Quite cold conditions there go along with those winds. Now I'll bounce up to the north, 35 to 55 below Tanana Valley up into the north slope areas. And near the frost point for the Pribilofs, lower to mid 30s for the Aleutians. And then the highs, Single numbers in the Panhandle to lower 30s, Sitka near 40 for Kodiak Island, teens south central Alaska, well below zero again north and west of the Alaska Range, and then near 40 for the central Aleutians, lower 40s Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather graphic, nothing but VFR from the Arctic coast tomorrow morning, Arctic Ocean, all the way down to Fognac Island into the southern end of Montague Island there. And it looks like some marginal VFR up and east of the Cape St. Elias area a little bit, but Yakutat and the Panhandle VFR. Marginal VFR Kodiak Island with some IFR for Sitkinak, Trinity Islands, and across the Alaska Peninsula into the southern Bristol Bay area, southeast Bering Sea. Another band there from St. Matthew Island. Southward across Akun Island, catching Unalaska Island as well as the extreme western Alaska Peninsula. Then a pretty good zone of VFR behind that, just west of the Pribilofs, Adak-Gatka VFR, and then some more IFR with another front out there to the west. And for the afternoon, no change over the interior. Marginal VFR maybe a little farther north, southern Kenai Peninsula now across Fognac Island, but south of the Prince William Sound area. And still up along the eastern North Gulf Coast, about the same area. And now some marginal VFR slipping on into Prince of Wales Island, into the central southern inside waters. IFR, say from Nelson Lagoon area up to Nunivak Island and to possibly Gamble, but more likely the northern Bering Sea and Pribilof. Stay in the IFR down across Fox Islands. Atka still VFR, so a VFR day tomorrow, mostly VFR for Adak, but it looks like some marginal stuff slipping in late in the day. IFR west of there to Shimi and Attu. And then for Tuesday, much more widespread IFR for the Bering Sea now, just a couple of zones of marginal VFR out to the west and southwest, and along the Alaska Peninsula and a little bit to the north, but marginal VFR in across most of Bristol Bay, but not all. Up along the southwest coast, St. Lawrence Island VFR, as well as Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta areas that are away from the coastline, Kuskokwim Valley, northeast Bristol Bay, Cook Inlet, and southern Kenai Peninsula looks southern southeast Kenai Peninsula, marginal VFR, Prince William Sound stays VFR, and then we've got marginal VFR along the eastern North Gulf Coast, as well as right along the coast of the Panhandle, everywhere else VFR. And for the afternoon, that pulls back off the southeast coast a little bit. Southern Kenai Peninsula marginal, Kodiak Island up across Togiak Bay, Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay to Nunivak Island, marginal VFR. IFR spreading into Shimi and Attu, otherwise widespread IFR for the Aleutians of the Alaska Peninsula, just about all of the Bering Sea, until you get to the northern Bering Sea and you stay VFR, St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound, everywhere else in the north. And for passes Anatuvik, VFR. Same forecast for Adigan. Brooks Range looking really good tomorrow, as well as the Alaska Range. All the passes will be VFR. In some cases, Celine's visibilities will be unlimited with windy VFR, either approach, Isabel, same forecast, Mentasta, nothing but VFR. Tanita, Celine's visibility is unlimited. And for Portage, VFR, Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels at the surface right along the central and south coast of the Panhandle, but south of the North Gulf Coast, back to the Kenai Peninsula, right across Kodiak Island, and then south of St. Matthew Island, but well to the north of the Pribilofs, 2,000 feet there over the west central Aleutians, 2,000 feet kind of overriding the surface freezing level there a little bit to Nunivak Island, 4,000 feet for the Alaska Peninsula, at 6,000 feet, say, to Sand Point. And icing, not a lot to speak of, maybe a little bit off the coast there of the eastern Gulf of Alaska, southern Panhandle, and that area is just a slight risk of some light icing. And then also for the eastern Aleutians, that weakening frontal boundary there, enough leftover moisture for just a threat of some elevated icing potential there to Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island. And a little bit better chance, but nothing significant out west for the western Aleutians, western Bering Sea. And icing free over all of the interior to Kodiak Island to the Arctic coast. For the jet stream, upper level lows there, one off the eastern Arctic coast and the other one there in northwest Canada. So we've got northwest winds 95 to 110 knots by the time you get in the Gulf of Alaska, cutting across southern Panhandle, 105 knots, ridging there, Alaska Peninsula and in along the west coast with south winds, 65 knots, and then 65 to 80 knot winds way out west. 9,000 feet northwest in the Gulf there, 35, 45 knots. Otherwise, pretty light winds everywhere else until you get out to the western Bering Sea, 50, 70 knot southerlies there. And 55 to 60 knot southerlies results in moderate chop around the western Aleutians, but more widespread moderate chop for the northern panhandle into the eastern, southeast interior. And that kind of lessens in the
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining me once again is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Eric, welcome back to the program.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
And once again, you brought some wonderful satellite pictures to show us and do a little show and tell about. It's just amazing. I can get lost in satellite pictures all day. What did you bring today?
Right. Well, weather satellites, what are they good for? Yeah. Of course, there's the pretty pictures that they bring us. You know, we've got a picture here from April of 2012. Okay. The Sumi NPP satellite, it's what they call a polar orbiter, which means it covers Alaska because we're near the pole. Beautiful image. You can see a storm off of southeast Alaska, the sea ice along the Bering Sea up into the Arctic. A really nice picture, and this is important because it allows a forecaster to see where the storms are, where the ice is, where the clear areas are. You need to know where the weather is now if you're going to forecast it into the future.
Exactly.
So satellites give us these good pictures. This is called surveillance of the weather. And you know, that same satellite also has another picture from a little more recently, August of 2014, Tropical Storm Iselle bearing down on the Hawaiian Islands. Hawaii doesn't get hit by a whole lot of tropical storms or hurricanes. Sometimes it does. And here's a picture from the same satellite, the Sumi NPP Polar Orbiter. It shows Tropical Storm Iselle approaching the Hawaiian Islands from the southeast. You can see the storm swirling away there, and then there's the Hawaiian Islands. This is a tropical storm, not quite as strong as a hurricane because we don't see the eye wall in there. This is still a serious weather system. And all of this information comes just from that satellite picture. It's so much information, and it's wonderful to look at. You see the beauty and the awe of nature right there depicted in that weather satellite. We call it a polar orbiter because the satellite flies high over the globe. Maybe we could look here at we happen to bring the planet Earth with us. This is our satellite. A polar orbit flies really close to the Earth, maybe 800 kilometers over the Earth, and goes up over the pole and then back down, and then the Earth spins under the satellite as it goes by. That's in contrast to the geostationary birds, which are much further out. And they don't view Alaska quite as well. So we love those polar orbiter satellites here in Alaska.
So when we're a lot closer, we get much better details and imagery and an idea of a better maybe position of what's going on when it's passing right over Alaska or right over Hawaii.
Yes, exactly right. The polar orbiter gives such a good view of places like Alaska. And because it's close to the planet, there's another aspect of satellites in the polar orbit that is helpful for weather forecasting. It's an aspect that's maybe not as immediately obvious as the pretty pictures that we see. And that is the capacity for the satellite to produce what's called a sounding. That is finding the vertical profile of temperature and moisture in the atmosphere. We've all heard of weather balloons. Weather balloons are launched here in Alaska twice a day at a number of airports, everywhere from Barrow to St. Paul Island to Kodiak, Anchorage and Fairbanks, Yakutat, a number of places. Launch these balloons, and we've got a picture of a balloon being launched at an airport, and the balloon goes up. It's pulling a little package, an instrument package with it that reports temperature, pressure, humidity data back, and we use that information to help feed what are called numerical weather prediction models.
The models.
The models, right. It's a mouthful, so we just call it the models. And these computer simulations, these models, are computer programs that simulate the motion of the atmosphere. Well, how does a model know what the future will be like? You have to tell the model what things are like now. And you give it all kinds of information, including information from these satellite sounders. Very important. Just how important are they? We have a comparatively recent study that really brings home, and this is Superstorm Sandy. We have a track image here of the track of Hurricane Sandy. It was down in the Caribbean around Cuba, and then it moved north over the ocean, offshore of the eastern seaboard, and then at the last minute, Sandy made what's called the left hook. It turned hard to the left and slammed into New Jersey. It was a major problem for the mid-Atlantic states, a calamity. It fused with another weather system and became known, this is not an official title, but Superstorm Sandy. It was quite the weather event. Well, the modelers, after the event, there's a group of modelers in Europe. They have a very good model, a frustratingly good model if you're the Americans trying to pursue their excellence. They reran their model afterwards in what's called a data denial study, where they kept everything the same. So this is 6 months after Sandy, but they went back, they reran the same model, they fed the model the same initial conditions, that is telling the model, okay, here's where we think Sandy is, down near Cuba in the Caribbean. Everything was the same as it was in the real forecast, except they didn't let the model know.
No satellite data.
No satellite data. So we're going to put that over here. No satellite data for you. The resulting forecast 5 days out, back when the real Sandy was happening and the model had the satellite data, the forecast was pretty good. We've got a graphic here on the left side. We show the forecast of where Sandy would be, and that's the red bullseye on the left. It's just south of where it actually wound up hitting. Not a bad forecast from this computer simulation, 120 hours out. On the right, you see the same model, but it didn't have the satellite data to help it understand things. And the storm is way offshore. It misses. The forecast is more accurate when the model has the satellite data. So that's the idea today we want to convey is weather satellites. They're important because they show us the pictures of where storms are. We see good examples of this. Yeah, the surveillance right now, it's great to look at those pictures. And in addition, behind the scenes, maybe not immediately obvious, but the models have to have that satellite data for them to be good forecasts. And then a meteorologist uses that information to help everyone with the forecast of where the storms will be in the future.
That is fascinating information that we can look and see where things have been, because you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. That's that old adage there. But seeing that satellites are actually helping us move forward in the weather information system is pretty amazing stuff.
You bet.
And if you want to check out Eric's satellite images that he's been talking about, whether that's something from today or last week or even much further back in Alaska history, you can easily do that yourself. Go to www.gina.alaska.edu and you can find those images there. Eric, thanks so much for joining us once again. And again, we will join you hopefully again soon for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, where you'll tell us more really cool information about the satellites over our heads in Alaska. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, not a lot of change with the easterly winds. It's kind of thinned out as the main push is from west to east with the winds. They're kind of, you can see some expanded areas of thinner ice up off the Yukon Delta coast, north of Nunivak Island, and also eastern Kuskokwim Bay there. Otherwise, looks like a little bit of well, not much change in Bristol Bay, and some ice still slowly increasing south of the Forelands and Cook Inlet. And for the coastal water forecasts, gale warnings on the north coast of the Panhandle, east winds 35 knots with small craft advisories for the central coast. For east winds at 25 knots, much lighter down along Prince of Wales Island coast from the south at 15, northeast 15 for Clarence Strait. Northerly winds 30 knots for Stevens Passage, and gale warnings out for Lynn Canal. Sustained 35 knots with storm force gusts of 55 knots. And on Tuesday, loses storm force wind gusts for Lynn Canal, but keep the gales out of the northwest at 35 knots. Small craft advisory Stevens Passage, north at 30, and northwest at 15 knots for Clarence Strait. And for the south coast, easterlies 20 to 25 knots with 9-foot seas. Gale warnings on the north coast for east winds at 35 knots, and then small craft advisories for the eastern North Gulf Coast for southeast winds 25 to 30. Prince William Sound, small craft advisories tomorrow. Northeast sustained 25 knots, seas 3 feet, and northeast 25 with gusts to 45 knots, eastern North Gulf Coast. Northeast 20 for the western North Gulf Coast. Same forecast for Barren Islands, northeast at 20. Small craft advisories, southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, where winds will be out of the northeast at 30 knots with 8-foot seas, and 15-knot northeast breeze for northern Cook Inlet. That'll increase to north at 20 for northern Cook Inlet on Tuesday. Otherwise, small craft advisories south of the Forelands, northeast 30 knots, and gale warnings now for Kamishak Bay, more easterly on the direction, sustained at 35 knots, east 30 for the Barren Islands, and western North Gulf Coast, northeast at 30, southeast 30 for the Middleton Island Zone. Prince William Sound, not too bad, winds east 20 knots, 4-foot seas. Shelikof Strait, northeast at 25 knots with 6-foot seas. Otherwise, east side of Kodiak Island, all the way down along the Alaska Peninsula at Cape Sarachev, Winds will be out of the east or east-northeast at 15 knots with 6 to 10 foot seas. Bristol Bay, northeast 25 knots. That's good for small craft advisories. Otherwise, on down toward Cape Sarichef, winds will be east at 20. And then pretty uniform on the wind direction and speed here with the Alaska Peninsula out of the east, 30 knots. Bristol Bay, east winds 30 knots. Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, east winds at 30 knots with 9 foot seas. Gale warnings, though, from Sitkinak to Castle Cape for east winds at 35 knots. And for Unalaska Island tomorrow, north to northwest 20 to 25 knots. Umak Island, northwest 15 to 20. Adak and Atka swinging around to the southeast 25 to 30 knots. Gale warnings for Amchitka Island for southeast winds at 35 knots. And then small craft advisories for Shimiatu and Kiska, southeast at 30. Those will become gale force out of the northwest there from Shimia to Kiska, with 14-foot seas, northeast gales for Amchitka Island, and gale warnings back to Adak and Atka, east-southeast 35 to 40 knots. And small craft advisories for the Fox Islands, where winds will be east 25 to 35 knots with 7 to 14-foot seas. Southwest coast, brisk wind advisories there for the Yukon Delta coast for east winds at 30 knots. Small craft advisories for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, east winds 25. Pribilof Islands northwest at 20. Southeast 30, St. Matthew Island. Gale warnings for Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island for 35 knot winds. And that holds through Tuesday. St. Lawrence Island and Norton Sound, gale warnings continue for east-northeasterlies at 35. Gale warnings now south of Nunivak Island for 35 knot winds out of the northeast. And full gales for St. Matthew Island, northeast at 40. Pribilof's east winds 20 knots. Central eastern Beaufort Sea coast, north to northeast winds is only at 10 knots tomorrow. Brisk wind advisories, though, for the area from Point Lay all the way down to Wales for east and northeast winds 25 to 30 knots. And that holds into Tuesday as well. Brisk wind advisories there from Wales up to Point Lay. And a little bit windier on the central and eastern Arctic coast. Not too bad, though, at about 20 knots from the east-northeast. Tonight, look for continued flurries over the eastern Beaufort Sea coast all the way down to the north side of the Alaska range, eastern Alaska range, but dry and increasing winds there through the Alaska range passes, especially the northern panhandle, and that continues through tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.